There you go, Vinod, in your
Awesome.
hands.
Thanks, James. So let's get right to it. Um, so to start off with, just a little bit about myself. I'm the CTO at Rocketplace. Rocketplace is a marketplace for B2B professional services. So for instance, if a startup wants to find a design agency to design their logo, or a software development firm to develop a part of the app, like right now, the process works like using social media to find out the service providers that the company can work with. Like it's word of mouth. People ask their friends, family for recommendations. So Rocketplace makes it a level playing field for service providers and also for clients to come in and to understand what they get for the money that they put in to their projects and stuff. So it also helps service providers get discovered on the internet, because most of the companies that we work with are small companies and they don't have their infrastructure set up to be able to attract clients from all over the world. And before Rocketplace, I was working at Zenefits. I started off as engineer number 3 at Zenefits, and I worked in the San Francisco office. So before Zenefits, my career was in financial services, and I grew up in India, and I moved to San Francisco for working at Zenefits. And I was there for a couple of years in San Francisco, and then moved to Vancouver to start the office here. And then that was in 2015, and grew the office from about 2 people in May 2015 to about 50 people in 2 years. And the company saw a huge growth. And so in terms of the transitions, I've gone through multiple transitions in the process, from being an IC to a manager, and also between countries, from India to the US, and now to Canada. And to talk about a few fun facts, I love learning languages, both human languages and computer languages. In middle school, I remember picking up thick books on Linux programming and just trying my hand out. And then I realized my passion for programming and technology back then. Apart from that, apart from computers and technology, I love traveling and hiking. And I discovered my passion for hiking after coming to BC. And there are a lot of places to travel, and yeah, hopefully things settle down in a while out here. And finally, I'm a passionate self-advocate of self-empowerment. And this means that like people are able to adapt to change, they're able to empower themselves and get through change, becoming a better version of themselves. So I'm a huge fan of that. All right. With that, let's get to the agenda. So what are we going to talk about today? So first, we'll talk about the different types of career transitions that people go through during the course of their life or career. We'll start with the why. Why do people transition and what it means? And the first step in going through that is understanding in terms of self-awareness. So why do I feel the way I feel? Is my thinking right? And since a transition is typically going into unknown territories for most people, it brings about emotions like self-doubt, uncertainties, and even fear. The first step in is understanding and awareness, and that's what we'll cover first. Next, we'll talk about setting the right goals and deciding what the next steps are, and what to aim for in a transition. So this will also provide answers on when to transition, and then deciding what the next steps are. After this, we'll talk about, so once the understanding is complete on the why and the next steps, we'll talk about how to make a data-driven decision to the best of our ability. And like what factors to consider, what are some frameworks that we can put to use in deciding both the timing and the type of transition that we want to go through. And that also brings about the other side of self-awareness, where you might actually not know things about your own self that you might understand in that process. And then after you've taken a data-driven decision, what can you expect during a transition? What are some common mistakes that people make? And then how to set yourself up for success. So we'll keep the session as interactive as possible. So we'll start off with a poll to get a distribution of the audience. So we can customize the talk a little bit. Although the slides are fixed, we can customize the talk a little bit based on the persona of folks in the audience. And then, yeah, feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and Perry and James can feel free to interrupt me at any point in time. We'll also have time for some Q&A at the end. So James, you can do the honors for the poll.
Yeah, awesome. So just one comment. So the poll is completely anonymous. I just want to make that very clear in case there's some apprehension whatsoever. We're not interested in who and what. So we're basically here interested in, getting a little bit what, like Vinod is saying, tailoring a little bit the talk and get some idea of the audience. That's all. So here it comes. There you go. So you should be able to see a poll right in front of you. Perfect.
It's not showing, James.
No?
James, I've not seen it.
That is weird.
Should I stop sharing my screen? Maybe it's because of that.
I can see 2 responses already. That is the strange part. 3 responses.
Okay. Maybe I think the hosts are not getting it. So if I did not get the poll.
Daniel is not a host, so he didn't get it. So I made the polls. No, there's many who didn't see it. Let me try again.
Okay.
It could also be not on the latest version of.
Well, some people are saying they can't see it.
I'm gonna relaunch it. Otherwise, we might need to skip it if there's an issue here.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yes. How about now?
I'm not seeing it.
Nope, not on my side. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I think
We might have to skip it then.
yeah, we
Or
have a bit of an issue. We can vote in the chat. Well, we could vote it in chat. The problem is that it's not anonymous anymore, right? So basically, the question is about you're here because you're thinking about a transition, in the process of transitioning, a topic if you're interested, for other people like family or friends, or manage someone that you're transitioning for. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why it's not working for everyone. Some people get it, some people don't. We'll have to pivot and skip it, unfortunately.
That's all right.
Okay.
That's all right.
I will end it. Okay, cool.
Sounds good. Awesome. So let's start talking about the types of career transitions. This might, this might cover a lot of things related to engineering, and also related to non-engineering, such as product and design, but it might not be 100% comprehensive. So the most common type of transition that people go through is while being at a company, transitioning from an individual contributor, IC, to a manager. And in some cases, it's important to note that the transition from an IC to a manager might not account for a promotion. So it might just be a lateral shift from being an IC to a manager. So so most, if not all, companies have parallel tracks for ICs and managers. And if a person moves at the same level from an IC to a manager, or vice versa, it's not a promotion, it's just a shift. And so that's a really common type of career transition. And it's important to differentiate that from a promotion. A promotion is when your title changes, when you get additional responsibilities, and in some cases that comes with managing people. And in many cases, people end up managing people who were previously their peers. And yeah, the final type of transition, probably in the same company, is moving from mid-management to an executive. And so one other shift that might happen with a promotion or between managers is a manager might become a manager of managers. And in that case, what might happen is the person might not be able to be in touch with their previously direct reports one-on-one in the same frequency. So one typical challenge that comes with these kinds of transitions in the same company is that the people in the company have seen you in a particular light previously, and now your role is going to be different from what it was before. So managing expectations with the people in the company, your stakeholders, becomes really important in these types of transitions. Now, thinking about outside the company, a very common type of transition, again, is getting a new job and working with a new set of people. And a new job might or might not come with, say, change in the title or responsibilities. And the typical challenge that comes out here in this scenario is, how do you make yourself as productive as possible as early as possible after joining the company? The next interesting one, I think people alluded to it after the breakout rooms. People in one part of the stack within engineering move to a different part of the stack, say from front-end development or back-end development to infra or DevOps, or even to mobile development, for instance. And I've listed some of these here: full stack, mobile dev, security. All of these are within engineering. And one typical thing that people have to deal with in this case is skills development, and also balancing learning with their productivity. This becomes important as the person is shifting to a different area of the stack. The next type of transition is taking it one step further, which is a lateral shift, which could even be outside of software engineering. Some people might argue that data science and machine learning are part of engineering. Some people argue it's outside, but then, like, I just put it out here because it's very different from how engineers typically think about the product and the mindset that goes into it, but it can be clubbed with engineering in case the organization has such a structure. The other organizations, product design, or even consulting, like technology consulting and stuff like that. Like if someone transitions from being an engineer to, say, a product manager, that falls under this category. Another popular one these days is you're working on a passionate side gig or a project. It's been going on for a while, and you're trying to decide whether you want to take the plunge and get into that full time just yet or not. So yeah, hopefully the framework outlined in the coming slides will give you some good food for thought related to that decision making there. And then I alluded to moving to different countries. So I'm sure some people have experienced it in the group. Moving to a different country also involves dealing with cultural challenges related to communication, presentation. So for one example is people might have communicated in a really direct way in the culture that you are from, but then after moving to a different country, say between Asia and North America or Europe and North America, you might actually have to adjust to those cultural differences. The last two are related to taking a break for personal or family reasons. and then getting back into the industry. And then you might have to just brush up on your skills and identify your strengths that you have on your plate while getting back into the industry. And then the similar type of transition is moving from part-time to full-time or vice versa.
Vinod, before we proceed, could I ask you to try one last time for the poll? Can you make me back host? Because I think that's the problem.
Interesting. Am I the host right now?
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
The Zoom host, I mean.
It says you are the host right now.
Oh, am I? Okay, then
yeah,
it won't work anyway. So let's continue.
Okay, sounds good. No worries. Awesome. So next, let's talk about why people transition. Here, I think, how many people responded to the poll? Just curious. I think.
Sorry, it was just 3.
Okay, then it's not worth it then. Let's move on. So let's talk about the whys. I think the why is really important to understand because that might provide a lot of clues related to how you feel about the transition and what you can do about it. So the first reason here is you're looking for growth and additional responsibilities. You might not find yourself challenged either technically or up to your potential, and you want a change in your role or additional responsibilities. And this is a common reason for people talking about promotions and talking about a growth framework, so to speak, or to talk about their career plans with their manager, especially. And this is a really common thing that happens in companies. The next one is sort of the opposite of that, which is you have a lot of work on your plate. You're looking for better work-life balance. You feel that you're not learning as much as you'd like while working a lot, and you're stressed out, and you want a better work-life balance. The next reason is the people around you and the work environment. And this can allude to the culture of the company as well. And so, yeah, as they say, life is short and you want to work with people you enjoy working with. And if that's not the case right now, you might be looking for a change. And that's one reason why people transition. And here, the people managers play a really important role. Because like if someone works really closely with their manager, and if they don't find that experience great, or if they account for that as some of the things that are not going well at their company, then the manager has a really high impact on how the employee feels related to the work environment. And then the next factor is gaining more expertise in a certain area. And I think this points to either a lateral shift from engineering to other organizations, or even within engineering, say from back-end development to mobile development, or back into infrastructure or DevOps, things of that sort, or vice versa. The next one is looking for opportunities to do what you love. And I think this talks a lot about why people take the plunge and get into entrepreneurship, start something on their own, or join a very small startup there. I think we'll also talk about the different motivating factors that drive people. And this is one of those. The next one is financial incentives. People might feel that they're not getting paid as much as they would like or up to their potential. And there are opportunities out there that offer that chance for them. The next one is midlife crisis, where I'm sure people would have gone through that a lot. So I've just thought about it many times, like why am I here? What am I doing? What do I want to do in life? So all those big questions. And some things that happen at the workplace might lead you to think about it. So things related to our life stage change as well. So say you get married or have kids, and that actually might change your mindset as well on what you want to do in your career. And now that we have seen broadly why people transition, let's understand like how you feel at your current job holistically. So like these are four simple questions that you can ask to determine how you feel at your current job and what you should consider. So what aspects of the current job do you like? So some examples might be related to the team or the people that you work with or the technology stack that you work on. And the next one is, what aspects do you not like or are you frustrated with? So for instance, it could be related to not having enough learning or being on call constantly or not having enough growth opportunities or stagnation, basically. And the other aspect is, what aspects are you good at? So this is more related to the mental time frame. So the first two questions are related to emotional stuff, like what do you feel about things? The next one is about your own skills. What aspects are you good at? And this might be related to the technology, like architecture, communication, or managing people, things like that. And what aspects do you want to get better at? And all these questions might provide you with a framework of, okay, so I wanna do this, and hence I'm thinking of this kind of a transition. And one important thing to remember out here is to think about it holistically and not just in terms of your salary or job title. Like especially in the current world where we are pretty much working remotely and we don't interact with our colleagues as often in person, if at all. We've got to look at all these factors in a holistic way. So also think about your mental health, your physical health, like how is the company contributing to your work-life balance? Are you getting to do what you like to do? How much free time do you have on your hands apart from the work, along with your job title and salary? I see a couple of questions. Do you want to take those now?
So if you can backtrack one slide, someone is asking what the second question was, but I'll paste them here because I took a screenshot.
Which one, sorry?
The next slide.
Oh, perfect. Okay, got it.
Awesome. Perhaps you can give like a few seconds for people to take note of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I encourage anyone who has questions, please just pop them into the chat and we'll address them.
Cool. Awesome. So now, after looking at or getting a better understanding about our own selves with self-awareness, let's talk about how to set the right goals and deciding what the next steps are. So this article that was put out by Stack Overflow caught my attention while I was thinking about transitions. And if you look at this post, Christina, who posted this, was the director of design at Stack Overflow. And she took up a new role as an associate software developer. And this is a very interesting case study because like people might wonder, how does this even compute? Like she's the director of design and she's getting to do what she likes to do. And certainly decisions like these are not easy and they come with a lot of trade-offs. And now we'll also talk about what factors go into such decision making. So in this post, for instance, Christina talks about how she was passionate about software engineering, writing code from the get-go after joining the company. and how she actually determined that that is what she wanted to get into, and how she had all these conversations within the company before deciding to stay at the same company, and like how she's doing in that role right now. So this is a very, very interesting case study. So I encourage everybody to take a look at this when you get a chance. So now with this in context, let's talk about setting the right goal and deciding the next steps. So I'm going to borrow this concept, the hedgehog concept, from Good to Great by Jim Collins. And in his book, Jim talks about a framework for companies for developing products, finding areas to work on, and for them to be successful. I find this fascinating to be able to apply the framework in the context of our own careers. So you might have heard people say, you should do what you love. And some people might have said, you should do what you're really good at. But it's not just that. It's a combination of these three things that matter. And like in your own career, you'll have to think about what are you deeply passionate about and what you really love doing. That's the first circle out here, the top circle. And to the left, you have what you can be best in the world, what you're really, really good at. And the third circle is what drives your economic engine, which means like it has to pay the bills and it has to help you grow in your career. So when we apply this framework to individuals, I think looking at things that lie at the intersection of these three circles is important. In many cases, you might not be able to find the exact intersection of these three circles, but what you might end up doing is finding an intersection between two circles and then moving into the common area between the three circles. So for instance, if we think about Christina at Stack Overflow from the blog post, she was at the intersection of what you can be best at and what drives your economic engine. Because at that position, like she would have gotten a lot of chance to grow, but was she deeply passionate about it? She was passionate about coding, and hence she wanted to move into it. And then that's a really good example of transitioning in the same company where there is trust with the people in the previous role and you know the domain well. So yeah, the gist of this is that your North Star should be to get to the intersection of all these three. And the next immediate transition might not get you there right away, but you've got to think about it to know where your destination can be and has to be, and to decide the route for it. And yeah, so especially in times of like huge transitions, it's important to take a break and self-reflect, because while we are in the weed of things, we might not get the clarity of mind to think about these questions and to think about these big questions and deciding what the next steps are. So it's very important to just like zoom out a little bit and self-reflect on these things. Awesome. The next, this is the next important section is how to make a data-driven decision to the best of our abilities. So oftentimes it's really hard to know if you're making the right decision before making the decision, because we get to like hindsight is 2020, right? And so we might not know like what frameworks to apply. So hopefully the framework that we're going to talk about helps you in that regard. So this is a framework on total motivation and motivating factors put out by Neil Doshi and Lindsay McGregor in their book, Prime to Perform. And in the book, the authors talk about 6 main motivating factors related to careers or even life. So let me explain a little bit about what these mean. There are 3 direct motivators and 3 indirect motivators. So let's start with play. So play occurs when you're engaging in an activity simply because you enjoy doing it. So for instance, like as engineers, we absolutely love coding, or as managers, we love helping people grow. And the work itself is its own reward. And the motive is intrinsic. And play is what compels you to take up, say, hobbies, like say solving puzzles or playing the guitar, because nobody else says that to you. You do it all by yourself. Many of us are lucky enough to find play in the workplace too, when we do what we do simply because we enjoy doing it. And companies also actively encourage their employees to play in their work. For instance, like you might have heard that Google provides, say, 20% of the time to employees to do what they like doing. And like many other companies do something very similar by giving people free time or resources. There might be hackathons that happen in the company to explore your own ideas. So all that contributes to play. And so play at work should not be confused with playing ping pong or foosball in the break room. For you to feel play at work, the motive must be fueled by the work itself and not the distraction. And that's the most important thing to remember there. The next motivator is purpose, and it is one step away from the work itself. So you might actually really like the purpose of the company or the mission of the company that you're at. So for instance, if your company solves something in the medical space and you're really passionate about it because of any personal experience or what, things like that, that corresponds to purpose. And purpose is what drives entrepreneurs in most, if not all cases. So that is purpose. So here, this is one step removed from the work itself. But in the case of entrepreneurs, it's a combination of play and purpose because they love what they do and they are also guided by the purpose, the mission of the company. So that's important there. The last direct motivator, it's still a direct motivator, is potential. So even if you don't completely like what you do, or you don't completely resonate with what your company does, you might actually you might want to look for the potential of your work. So for instance, you want to become a holistic full stack engineer, and you're getting the opportunity to work at a great company with a great set of people. So you have the potential to become a better engineer or a better manager, and that contributes to potential. So this is one more step removed from purpose because it's second degree. It's not first degree. So play is 0th degree. You have the work itself, and you're fueled by that. The next one is purpose, which is 1 degree removed. The next one is potential, which is 1 more degree removed. And all these 3 things are direct motivators in that they improve the performance. Now let's talk about indirect motivators. Indirect motivators, just to clarify, are not necessarily bad, but it helps in the understanding that this is what is the motivator at my current job. So the first indirect motivator is emotional. So you do something because you want to either please yourself or others, and like some people even call it the carrot and stick approach, where you either get a reward or like emotionally speaking. So you might actually make your partner, say, feel bad if you don't do your work or if you're not at your job, and that contributes to emotional motivator. The next one is economic, which is you work at your job because you're getting paid, and that's the main motivator. And if that's the main motivator, it's very indirect. It actually contributes negatively to the performance. And this is also similar to the carrot and stick approach, where If someone does not get rewarded, if they don't do something and hence they do it, it is an indirect motivator. The final motivator, the worst of all, is inertia. So inertia of either rest or of motion is because you do something because you did it yesterday. You don't know why you started doing it anymore. You might have to dig deep to find out, but then you continue to do something because you did it yesterday and you did the same thing day before yesterday, last week, and so on. And this is the most indirect of all because it absolutely reduces performance. And it's very important for managers to also know what the motivating factors are of people in their teams. Now, you can apply this framework to how you feel at your current job, along with the 4 questions that we saw before, to see why you feel that way. So this might give you a good framework of, okay, so am I thinking the right way in terms of my transition? And then going back a little bit to the previous slide, so the authors define total motivation as the direct motives multiplied by certain weights that they talk about in the book, subtracted by the product of all the emotional, economic, and inertia related scores. So you add up all the direct motivators, the score corresponding to those, by providing a weight to each of these factors. And then you subtract the indirect motives, and then you figure out what your total motivation is. And in some cases, if your total motivation is a negative because these negatives overweigh the positives, then it might go below 0. And if the direct motives overweigh the indirect motives, the total motivation would be positive. And it's really good to aim for a very high direct motive or a total motivation score to be able to determine what we want to do related to the transition. Awesome. So the next thing we'll talk about is how to make, continuing on how to make a data-driven decision. So we'll talk about all the things that you can do from indirectly to directly in this order in this slide. So first, talk to people who have gone through similar transitions, reach out to your network, and like be it a lateral shift or be it something within the same company or outside, feel free to, like, you should absolutely reach out to your network and talk to people who've gone through similar transitions. And I really like the saying that I heard like some time ago, which is stupid people don't learn from their mistakes. Good people learn from their mistakes. Great people learn from other people's mistakes. And so, yeah, like the more you talk and the more you chat with people about the transitions, you'll actually get a better understanding of what's out there for yourself. And one important thing to note here is be aware of survivor bias. Don't just talk to people who've just succeeded in their role. Also talk to people who've not succeeded or who've actually undergone a lot of challenges and then learn from that experience. Talk to people who say this is not the right thing for you. They might have a really good point. You might actually think that like you're making the right decision based on all the slides that we've seen before. But then, like, if you talk to people who really care about you, that's a distinction we need to make while talking to people. So you've got to absolutely ascertain that that person cares about you while talking about the transition. And if such a person says this is not the right thing for you, or this may not be the right thing for you, talk to them and understand why they say that. They may have a valid point, but don't let that just drive your decision completely, but just take that into account in the decision-making process. The next thing you can do is more direct, which is upskill being in your current job before the actual transition, if you do want to transition. So for instance, if you want to get into, say, machine learning from software engineering, what you might want to do is identify areas where like you can leverage your existing skills. So for instance, if you're working in, say, infrastructure or DevOps, and if you want to get into machine learning, you can go through ML Ops, which also deals with the infrastructure, but it deals with machine learning a lot. And the same thing would apply to ICs who want to be managers, for instance, like reading some of these books about management and talking to their own manager about it. I'm going to getting through courses and upskilling while being in your current job would actually get you to where you want to be really, really fast. The next thing is, have you tested the waters of your target role from your current role? You may or may not like that. For instance, if you transition from one area of engineering to another, try to like get through courses or just like do some on-the-job stuff as much as you can, while like bringing the manager on board and talking to the people in the team about it, and just test the waters before you take the plunge, because you may or may not like it. The last thing here is, have you done or can you do side projects? And this is really important for, say, budding entrepreneurs who want to get into the domain full time and want to do something of their own. Yeah, like some of my personal experiences have been to test the waters of my target role from the current role, be it a manager or being like completely hands-on, all of that stuff, or getting into a very small company or a startup. So this might help you just get to it, get the transition. Awesome. So finally, once you've decided that you are going ahead with a transition and you're feeling confident about it, you've gotten rid of your fear, but there are still some uncertainties about it. What can you expect during a transition? So at a professional level, perception management from the current role, in existing organizations. So we spoke about it a little bit before, where people have seen you in the same organization in one light, and they're going to see you very differently. But they already have the first impression of you. So it takes a while to change their perception of yourself. And so you've got to be really careful about how you manage the expectations and the perceptions related to that. One interesting thing in this context is people themselves might continue to perform in their previous role, at least in their mind, even after the transition happens. So for instance, if you shift from, say, a front-end engineer to a mobile developer, you might still want to get into the React code if you work in React.js, for instance. And like if a front-end engineer, if a different front-end engineer puts out a pull request, you might want to review it, and you might actually get deep into that while not getting your work done, or upskilling yourself in the target area. But you've got to be careful about that. Another thing out here is not getting too overwhelmed by all the info out there, and just follow like simple frameworks that you can use to better understand yourself, understand your feelings, and then go through the transition. That's why like I don't have a very heavy slide deck, or I'm not talking about each individual case out here, but there's a broad framework that you can apply for different types of transitions. Another thing is you will have to go out of your comfort zone in performing the target role, because the best learning comes from being on the job. You might actually have all the things planned out, but when you're on the job, you might have to go out of your comfort zone in performing that role. There might be pay cuts involved in the target role, and there could be role or title changes. So for instance, Christina from Stack Overflow talked about how she went from being a director of design to an associate software developer. but she has a good path ahead of her in terms of getting promoted to a software developer, senior software developer, and so on. But then as long as we identify the based on the 3 circles and based on what the motivating factors are, and if you're feeling really, really confident about the transition, you should go for it. You can also expect lots of learning to happen in the target role. So yeah, just be aware and prepared for that. And then at a personal level, identify a support system, be it family, your partner, or whoever it is. And I think that goes a long way in helping through career transitions. And sometimes it does help to have a backup plan in case the transition does not work out, be it starting something on your own or dabbling in an area that you've not worked in before. Set timelines for experimentation, and be open to pivoting if that doesn't play out the way you expect it to. So this is a chart that I've borrowed from The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. Here, the author talks about this chart is mainly for leaders in organizations, especially in large organizations, where he says once a person transitions or joins a new company or just goes through a transition, they consume value from the company until they break even, and then they start producing value. And then at that point, the net contribution is actually 0 based on when they started. The time frame is definitely lesser for individual contributors and also for smaller companies. So if it's a startup, you won't have this much time to actually get to the break-even point. You'd have to start being really, really productive. But this is a framework that's good to have in mind to understand what's happening in your new role. If you feel that you're not being productive enough, you can identify what factors contribute to it. Is it the learning, or is it like other factors, all of that stuff? And I think one thing about transitions is be sure to leverage your existing strengths and not just throw them away. So for instance, if you're strong in a particular area, try to leverage that as much as possible while transitioning into the next one. So this is a paradoxical statement in that I just said previously that people might continue to perform their previous role, at least in their mind, after transitioning. But then it's important to balance your responsibilities in the new role with your existing strengths or what you bring to the table, be it related to presentations, communication, management, or technically what have you. Awesome. So the final section is how to set yourself up for success. Here, leverage your strengths and your experience. Build trust in a virtual environment. So one thing I've seen is, or I've experienced it, like both from personal and a professional level, is building trust in person is so much easier than building trust in a virtual environment. So if you've met someone in person at least once, talking to them over video or a voice call later becomes so much easier. So, but do not be worried about that in the current environment. It's good to be aware that, okay, so I worked at this company before, and then I became friends with these people, or I was able to build trust in, say, a few days, but then in my new job, it's taking me a really long time. And so don't beat yourself up, because the current virtual environment also has its impact on that. So it's good to be aware of what's happening there and why you're feeling that way. And chart out your 30, 60, 90-day plan, the first 90 days. And it's good to have a 30, 60, 90 plan on what do you want to do versus what you can do, and then go from there. Also, make sure to communicate effectively and transparently about your goals and objectives and manage expectations. This alludes to the perception management we talked about before as well. Have a growth mindset. So just like learning and growing has to be a really, really good part of the transition. And again, I think it's important to stress having the right balance between learning and productivity. So you've also got to learn and be productive at the same time. And finally, like this is understated. You need to have a lot of self-compassion for yourself. It's so easy to just beat yourself up over something that you've not done well or something that you see you can do better at. So go easy on yourself. So have a lot of self-compassion. And I think self-compassion, there was this article some time ago about self-compassion and self-esteem. Like self-compassion is super, super important for everybody, like especially for us as engineers, because like all throughout the day, we've been just coding, we've been talking to the computer, and talking to people is very different from talking to computers. Yeah, you've absolutely got to have a lot of self-compassion. Awesome. I think, yeah, so one other thing you can do related to that to feel good is to do journaling. So like one of the best best pieces of advice that I've ever got was from my previous manager about just jotting down things that you've done well or you feel really good about in the past week. So say on a Friday afternoon or evening, just take some time, 15 minutes, half an hour, to just think about and write down things that you did during the week that make you feel really good. And before that, I was just getting lost in the weeds. And so after I started doing this, I think my outlook on work, on the job, just really, really improved a lot. And so, yeah, I absolutely advocated to other folks as well.
We have a question, Vinod, if you want to take it.
For sure.
So the question, and Sharman, please feel free to jump in. Do you have any tips or personal experiences on balancing learning and productivity, especially in an IC role? For example, I guess it's front-end learning versus back-end.
Got it.
Just yeah, for my personal, I guess, experiences, like I'm trying to learn more about the back end, but I specialize in the front end. So I'm just trying to balance that or figure out how to balance that better.
Got it. So I think that, yeah, that's a great question. So in my experience, I went through a transition from like very early in my career. I went through a transition from being a pure backend engineer to a front-end engineer. And then maybe 2 years after that, from a full stack engineer to infrastructure or DevOps. So one thing you can absolutely leverage here is your expertise. So especially if you're working at the same job, you know the product and the domain really well, or you should know the product and the domain really well, because this corresponds to the motivators that we spoke about. So the first motivator is play. So if you really love what you do, that's play. And so the second one is purpose. And so having a good level of alignment with what the company does really, really helps in the job. And so if you're working the same job, you've already gotten experience with the domain and the product, and that helps you enjoy or get gratified by the work you do. And so with that in mind, since you already have some knowledge about the domain and you know the people that you work with, what you can do is just like continue talking to the people. Like, so if you're already working on front end and you're learning back end, one thing you could do is dabble in areas that act as a bridge between front end and back end. So as a front end engineer, for instance, you might have consumed APIs like either REST or GraphQL, and part of the backend team works on APIs because they put them out. And so just identify bridge areas such as like endpoints, REST endpoints, GraphQL endpoints that you have experience with working on as a front-end engineer, and think about how the development happens on the back end while getting into it. And once you get familiar with that area of APIs, you might actually be able to get into other areas of the backend, say database development or managing hosts, things like that. So I think you've just got to helping or like identifying your own strengths and your experience and identifying bridge areas, I think is the key to balancing learning and productivity. At the same time, for productivity, I think it's important to get continuous feedback on how well you're doing. Sometimes we tend to get curious and start exploring things, especially while we are learning stuff. And it's good to get feedback and act on how you're doing related to your productivity and your velocity while balancing it with the learning and quality. And this absolutely applies to other areas as well. For instance, someone that wants to transition from, say, software engineering to product management might want to get to that route via a technical product management. That's just another example.
Cool. Thanks. That was a great answer, and also great talk.
Awesome. Cool. So finally, I just wanted to talk about some hiring that's happening at Rocketplace. So we are hiring software engineers, especially full stack. Even if you worked just on the front end or the back end, it's all right. And we're a very small team right now. We have a total of 4 full-time engineers, including myself and 1 part-time engineer. And our stack consists of React.js on the front end and Django, Python on the back end. GraphQL is the layer in between the two. We use PostgreSQL as our database in the back end. We run our infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. And yeah, so right now we are focusing on demand side growth, where we want to get people through the door, prospective clients who are looking for projects related to, say, design or accounting or software development. And so we have a huge roadmap laid out. So there are a lot of exciting projects in the pipeline. And here's my contact info. So feel free to reach out to me on email or LinkedIn after this. And yeah, happy to chat.
Cool. Vinod, there's a couple of other things. If you don't mind, I have one of my own questions, which if you go back to the other slide. So one thing that is sort of like very much, we're living it, or we've been living it since March last year. We're closing a year now. How do you build trust in a virtual environment? Do you have some examples? To your point, right? Trust is key. And when you don't have that face-to-face, are there any steps? Are there any things that we should be aware of?
For sure. That's a great question. So I think one thing that I found to build trust in a virtual environment is have a really good sense of humor and just communicate effectively and transparently. I think written communication is super, super important, especially in a virtual environment, because say if you're doing code reviews, or if you're writing some logic in the code, or if you're talking about your career plans, it's super helpful to write everything down and to be able to communicate using words, because when you chat virtually, it's definitely different from chatting in person. So like in an in-person environment, you might just tap the other person on the shoulder, ask them why they coded something in the code base, or why they did not leave a comment for what they wrote. And all these things are they're mostly related to software engineers. And I think since the audience is mostly software engineers, I'm talking about that primarily. But I think written communication is super important. And also, yeah, I think the team building activities that happen in the company really help. So it helps to actually get in there and socialize as much as we can, and have a good sense of humor. like for instance, even having a sense of humor was kind of foreign to me, and then I developed my own sense of humor, so to speak. Because so you might not be comfortable with that at the beginning, but then it helps as you get into it. And one other thing you can do is just having empathy for others, because we don't know what people are going through in their own lives, and like the less we meet people in person, the less we understand what's going on. And going back to starting with why and the motivating factors and all these emotions, people might not be as ready to open up virtually as much they were in person. So it's important to have that empathy in mind. So be kind to the people around you.
Awesome. But we can take more questions in the meantime. Justice made a note here. Don't forget atomic design philosophies and a big focus on analytics and experimentation.
100%.
Oh, also another comment around building trust, I suppose. Having small talk at times would certainly help build trust and rapport.
Absolutely. Great point.
One thing that we do in our team is icebreakers. Many of our teams actually in Galvanize, we do that. And we rotate. Once a week, we do a person is chosen before stand-up to run an icebreaker. It could be simple, it could be a bit deeper, a deeper question. Deeper questions tend to, happen with teams that are already gelled over a long period of time. But it could be as simple, what's your favorite food, basically. And it's one way to learn from other people. That has worked very well for us.
At Rocketplace, we start doing icebreakers every morning with everybody in the company. And it depends on how large the company is. Since we have like 10 employees in the company right now, we have an icebreaker session with everybody. And then like as the company becomes bigger, we might have icebreaker sessions in different teams. Yeah. And yeah, like questions like what's your favorite food, favorite books, movies, all that absolutely helps. 100%.
Cool. Any other questions? All right, then let's call it a wrap. Thank you, everyone,
thank
for
you
joining.
So much, James and Perry, for hosting it, and thank you so much to Galvanize Procurify for all the help. And so yeah, thanks everybody for attending. I hope this was useful.
Thank you for the excellent talk and tips. I took note of the books actually, so I added them to my list. We can also post those after when we upload the video, the recording.
Absolutely.
So we can point the references so for people to have that. Is it possible for you to share the slides as well?
Yeah, I can share the slides.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right, thank you everyone. Thanks a lot, and
Thanks, Vinod.
As the next event probably is going to be in April, and we'll likely be talking about serverless computing. So stay tuned. Cheers.
Cool. Have a good night, all.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.